Have you ever noticed how a child will pick up a crayon and begin to draw without hesitation? No one taught them the right way to hold it. No one told them whether the sun should be yellow or purple. They simply express. And in that moment, their small hands are speaking a language that doesn't need words. That is art before it becomes a subject in school, before it is compared, graded, or judged. It is raw, unfiltered being. Somewhere along the way, most of us lose that. We stop drawing, painting, singing, or dancing, not because we don't need it anymore, but because we think we aren't good enough. Yet the truth is, art was never meant to be a contest. It was meant to be a release. Art is therapy not because it fixes us like a mechanic fixes a car, but because it allows us to see ourselves clearly, without filters, without the heavy masks we wear in public. Think of a day when your mind felt heavy with thoughts you couldn't quite explain. You sat down, maybe with a pen, maybe at a piano, maybe with clay in your hands, and after a while something shifted. Not because the world outside had changed, but because you had poured out a piece of yourself onto something tangible. This is why therapy and art are so deeply intertwined. You don't need to be Picasso or Beethoven, you simply need to let your emotions take shape. The magic lies in the process, not the product. We live in a world obsessed with results. How much you earn, how many followers you have, how perfect the outcome appears. But art says, forget the end, feel the now. In the act of creating, you touch a timeless space where your anxieties don't dictate the pace of your breathing. A brushstroke can hold the weight of 1,000 unspoken words. A melody can hold the memory of someone you've lost. Even a messy sketch in the corner of a notebook can be the release that stops a storm inside your mind. And here's the irony. When you allow yourself to create without judging, without chasing perfection, you often find something more beautiful than if you had tried to make it perfect. Because life itself is imperfect, and yet in its flaws we see its real beauty. Art mirrors that truth back to us. In every smudge, every broken line, every off-key note, there is a reminder that you are allowed to be human. So I'm asking you, pick up the brush, the pen, the camera, the instrument. Not to impress anyone, not to post on social media, not to prove anything. Do it because there's a part of you that's waiting to speak, but it doesn't speak in words. Let your emotions flow through colors, shapes, and sounds. Let them breathe outside of you so they stop suffocating inside. In the end, you'll realize it's not about creating art, it's about creating space for yourself to heal. And that, my friend, is a masterpiece no one else needs to see but you. We've been taught to measure our worth by outcomes. How beautiful the painting looks, how perfect the song sounds, how many people praise what we've made. But art, in its truest form, has nothing to do with that. It doesn't ask you to impress, it asks you to express. When you sit down to create, you are giving yourself permission to speak a language beyond words. A brushstroke becomes a sigh of relief, a sketch becomes a confession, a melody becomes a tear you didn't even realize was waiting to fall. This is why art has such profound power as therapy. It bypasses the thinking mind, the part of you that worries about judgment, and it goes straight to the heart. When you create without worrying about the result, you step into a space where time slows down. The chatter of your mind fades, and you become absorbed in the movement of your hands, the rhythm of your breath, the subtle way colors blend or notes rise. In this state, the weight you've been carrying begins to lift, not because the outside world has changed, but because you've given your emotions a safe place to go. That sadness that felt like a knot in your chest finds itself in the swirl of blue paint. That frustration that had you clenching your jaw now lives in the sharp, quick strokes of your pen. That longing that had no words finds its voice in a simple tune you hum without thinking. This is why talent is irrelevant in the healing power of art. You don't need to be a painter to benefit from painting, just as you don't need to be a writer to benefit from journaling. The goal isn't to make something worthy of a gallery or a publisher. It's to make something worthy of your own inner peace. The process itself becomes the medicine. It's the act of transferring what's inside of you into something outside of you that matters, the act of releasing, of letting go. And when you allow yourself to do this regularly, something shifts deep within you. You begin to realize that you don't always need to explain yourself, you don't always need to solve every problem in your head, and you certainly don't need anyone else's approval to feel whole. Your creative act becomes your refuge. It becomes the place you go to empty yourself of the noise of the world and reconnect with what's real and alive inside you. In that moment, you are not good or bad at art. You are simply a human being giving shape to your feelings. And in doing so, you begin to heal. In the world of art, perfection is an illusion, and thankfully, it's one we don't need. Every smudge, every uneven line, every note that doesn't quite match the intended pitch carries its own kind of truth. Life itself is built on such imperfections. The weather changes without warning, relationships shift in ways we can't predict, and our emotions rise and fall like the tide. We are not flawless beings, and yet it's in that very imperfection that our depth and beauty emerge. Art reflects this back to us with a kind of honesty that no mirror can offer. When you create something that isn't perfect, you're actually telling a story about yourself, your real self. The crooked lines show the tremble of your hand, maybe from excitement, maybe from sorrow. The uneven brushstrokes reveal the pace of your heart that day, quick or slow. The crack in your voice when you sing tells more about your truth than any polished, edited recording ever could. These so-called flaws are not mistakes to be erased. They are the fingerprints of your humanity. The beauty of art as therapy is that it invites you to embrace these flaws, to see them not as failures, but as natural expressions of life's messiness. In doing so, you begin to treat yourself with more compassion. You stop expecting yourself to always have the right words, the right answers, the right reactions. You realize that your worth doesn't lie in appearing perfect, but in being authentic. This shift in perspective can be deeply healing, because so much of our stress and anxiety comes from the pressure to perform, to live up to impossible standards. By accepting the imperfections in your art, you practice accepting the imperfections in your life. A painting with an unintended streak of color becomes a reminder that unexpected events can lead to beauty. A poem with uneven rhythm shows that life doesn't have to move at a steady, predictable pace to be meaningful. A dance with a stumble in it proves that movement is still graceful even when it isn't smooth. And here's the deeper truth. Sometimes the very thing you thought was a mistake becomes the most powerful part of your creation. The smudge that changes the whole mood of a drawing, the accidental chord that gives a song its soul, the slip of the tongue in a performance that makes the audience feel something real. These moments are not accidents. They are authenticity showing itself. Life, like art, is not about eliminating flaws. It's about letting them become part of the whole picture. In that acceptance, you not only create something honest, you create a version of yourself that is free. Art is not a privilege for the talented. It is a necessity for the soul. It is the quiet, unspoken therapy that allows us to express what words cannot hold. In creating, we give our emotions a place to breathe, and in embracing imperfections, we learn to accept our own humanity. Every brushstroke, every off-key note, every uneven line becomes a mirror, showing us that beauty is not found in perfection, but in authenticity. When you let go of the pressure to perform and instead create for the sake of feeling, you open a door to healing. The act itself becomes your sanctuary, a space where judgment cannot enter and where your spirit is allowed to simply be. And in that sacred space, you realize that the masterpiece was never the art you made, but the peace you found in making it. So let yourself create, not for applause, not for validation, but because your soul is asking to speak in color, in shape, in sound. Listen to it, answer it, and watch as art quietly does what it has always done. Remind you that you are human, and that is enough.